Thank you, Tony. Yeah, the title of my speech this morning is Why Are You Here? And so that's my question. Why are you here? Why are you here? Did you come for the food? Maybe for the fellowship, the camaraderie of this club? Oh no, maybe you came to improve your speaking skills. And how do we do that? Well, we practice. We practice things that we're uncomfortable doing and that we're not sure we can do. And as time goes on, we get better and better and better at it. But this morning, what we're going to talk about is the leadership skills. Now, I'm going to go through all of the officers and what their duties are. And I've got a handout, and I'm going to ask you to go down that list as I talk about the duties and make a check mark by those things that you think you could do. First officer that we're talking about this morning is the president. Now, the president sets the mood and the tone and the direction for the club. What's the president's duties? Well, the president's duty are, number one, to preside over all the meetings. And the president is also an ad hoc member of all the other committees. So there's two jobs right there that the president does that somebody else could come and do if the president wasn't there one day. Preside over a meeting. How might that help you? Well, you might be in a social situation. You might be at church. You might be at work. You might be asked to speak at a wedding or a funeral. And you could put your hand up and say, yeah, I can do that. I can preside over a meeting. You know why? I practiced at Toastmaster. Next officer is the Vice President of Education. Now, the Vice President of Education is to assist every member to reach their goals. The Vice President also schedules the weekly agenda, the speeches, the evaluators, and it should be on a floating roster. The reason I bring that up is if you're on the voluntary system, where every week you ask for a volunteer, what you end up with the same people doing the same things week in and week out, things that they're comfortable with. Now, what should we be trying to do? We should jump in and do those things that we're not that comfortable doing. So the rotating roster will allow that to happen. Also, the Vice President of Education is in charge of the contests. Supposed to maybe distribute trophies or certificates, and also the mentoring program. So the Vice President of Education has got 5 jobs. Theoretically, they could use 5 assistants. Right? So is there something you could volunteer for once in a while? Do one of those jobs? How about membership? The job of membership is to attract new members to the club. When you have a guest come to the club, you want to convert them to be a member. Once they're a member, then you want to retain them. So there's 3 jobs right there that we could have assistants or volunteers for. How about public relations? Well, public relations is supposed to promote the club. How do you do that? Well, you might put out a newsletter. You might put out flyers, anything that's newsworthy. You want to promote the club. You want to bring it out to the attention of the public. Web design, we're working on that. So there's 4 positions underneath public relations that we could have 4 volunteers. How about the secretary? Well, the secretary keeps club records, the minutes of the regular meeting, the minutes of executive meeting, the minutes of any special meetings. Also supposed to keep a roster of all the members, and a list of the officers. So there's 4 jobs there. We could use 4 assistants, 4 members to help. How about the treasurer? Well, the treasurer's job is to collect and pay dues. It's the club accountant. We have to have an income and expense statement. You know, how much money do we bring in every year? What are the expenses? How much goes out? Is there any left over? What about the assets? What kind of assets does the club own? And what are they worth? And what are the liabilities? That's assets and liability statement. And then there's tax documents that need to be filed. So there's 3 jobs that the treasurer could use assistance in. So there's, as you see, as we go down this list, there's 26 assistant jobs that you could volunteer for. How about Sergeant of Arms? Well, the Sergeant of Arms has to first secure or rent some kind of a facility. If it's a restaurant or a library or an office someplace, they have to arrange that we have a meeting place. Has to keep track of all the physical assets of the club, the banners, the ballots, the lectern, the equipment, all that stuff has to be inventoried and taken care of. And another job of the Sergeant of Arms is to escort members out of the room while the membership at large votes them in. Another thing that we don't think about very often, the Sergeant of Arms is supposed to guard the door. Make sure that there are no interruptions while there's a speech going on. We don't want any latecomers coming in, disrupting the meeting. So there's 5 jobs that the Sergeant of Arms could use assistance with. So when you're out there in the real world and somebody says, we need somebody to do this, do that, or the other, you'll be able to say, I can do that. I practice at Toastmaster.